rather than high-tech industry. But yes, some manufacturing and some production goes side by side with agricultural production.
What about the educational system?
Yes, every village, Gandhian village, has a school, and also in the school, children have three things, what we call head, heart, and hands. So children learn to write, to read, to think, to write poetry, to learn science, all that, the head. Then also children have to learn heart, how you connect with other people, how you develop compassion, kindness, a sense of service. And then hands. All children have to learn some skills. They learn gardening, they learn cooking, they learn weaving, spinning, pottery, some sort of craft, and agriculture, gardening. So head, heart, and hands. Those are the three words that Gandhian village will learn. Yeah, okay.
It's bearing in, but once you
Characterize
it's bearing in.
Is downstairs.
He's already running, already talking.
Who is it?
I'm in touch. I am talking to the United States. Have we got mixed up with downstairs? Have we got mixed up with downstairs?
Yeah, we were just trying to sort your chat out, but you're already having it, so I'll sign off.
Hey, thanks. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so they were also trying. Okay. Now we are connected.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a kind of education. So the Gandhian education is based in practical education as well as intellectual education. Whereas most other education, other schools are purely intellectual.
Right.
But Gandhi said that we must not have just intellectual. We must learn, children should learn to become producers as well as thinkers and writers.
Well, from the way that I approach all that is I try very much to have a hands-on approach where people do things with their hands as well as their head and their heart.
Exactly, exactly. That's a very Gandhian principle, hands-on.
So I think we have most people here now, Satish. And
Yes.
And I will
Scott,
maybe and we have Scott Vaughn here from Maine who is tied in. He's got an organization there called the Center for Technology-Based Economy, and
Yes.
and he teaches permaculture here. And
Yes.
let me introduce Satish just for a second here. So Satish is the founder of Schumacher College, and he had for many years, 40 plus years, he's been the editor of Resurgence magazine, which is the premier magazine related to deep sustainability and spirituality and sustainability in general, ecology in general in the UK. And it just recently combined with the Ecologist magazine. And it's a wonderful magazine. We have it here in the library. And then
good.
Satish has been a long, he has been a Jain monk when he was young. And so he's very interested in live this life of kind of radical simplicity, but he has maintained being globally connected. He's done very large activism projects, like for example, in his early 20s, he walked from India to Moscow to Paris to London to Washington to protest against nuclear weapons. And he did it without taking any money because he wanted people to feel like he trusted them. And so the other thing about Satish, because of his deep understanding of Vedic wisdom and his living of it, he has a very deep understanding about sustainability and consciousness, and how well-being is related to the development of consciousness, which is very central to our mission here at Maharishi University of Management. And Satish is going to be here next year for 3 weeks and teach a course. And we're still working on exactly what that is, but he'll be here next week next year in May. And Satish, he's as knowledgeable as anybody I've met about the history of ecological thought and the current thinking, because at Schumacher College, all the top leaders in the field come by regularly, and Satish interacts with them. So we have just a fantastic opportunity to explore with Satish. He's thought deeply about education. He's thought very deeply about meaningful work and livelihood. So Satish, do you want to get introduced to some of the people here, or do you just want to start to talk?
Yeah. So I would like to have one or two questions from you, and then I can talk about it.
Okay. So
why don't you ask a question?
Yeah. So who has a question? Students. Yeah. He also loves to talk about love. He says Schumacher College is about you think it's a educational institution, but it's really a place to fall in love with the earth, with yourself, with others. And I certainly had lots of that experience when I was there. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, hello, Satish, and hey, Scott.
Hello, hello.
Let's see. The first thing that comes to mind. I mean, I'd like to know about any like major impacts that your Resurgence magazine has had, if it's made any policy changes in European nations or anywhere for that matter. I'd like to know about like some of the most salient lessons you learned from this major pilgrimage you did in your youth. And I'd also love to your insights on how you think Western civilization will cope with imminent automation. Most of our job force could be feasibly totally automated. So where does that leave the necessity of human labor? You know, I think that's kind of
let's start one by one.
Okay.
Then you can come back for a second question. The first question is the impact of Resurgence and the ecologists on the policy and the mainstream society, right?
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. The Resurgence has been going for 52 years. The ecologists for about 45 years. In this time, we have seen many, many big changes. For example, when we started Resurgence, not a single windmill was producing energy in Britain. Not a single solar panel was producing renewable energy in the UK. Now, it's 52 years later, 25 to 30% of our energy is coming from the solar panels and the wind and the water. That's a huge change. And the Resurgence and ecologists has contributed that change. Together with, of course, other organizations. But Resurgence and the ecologists was the pioneer in creating the awareness about renewable energy. Secondly, food. When Resurgence started, if you said to somebody in Britain, vegetarian or vegan, they say, what is that? They would not understand, or it would be something strange. But now, any restaurant you go, there is a vegetarian menu. And even in supermarkets, like Waitrose, which is one of the supermarkets in Britain, has a vegan section. That's a big change in our food habits. And so also, the tremendous amount of recycling. 50 years ago, there was a very little recycling. Now there's much more recycling. More than that, Resurgence has been able to bring to the attention of people that not only is the outer environment that we have to live with in harmony, but also spiritual values, which was almost a kind of people connected spirituality with organized religion, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, etc. But now people can separate that to be spiritual does not mean that you are a member of any organized, institutionalized religion. You are just practicing meditation, practicing simple life, practicing compassion, practicing love, practicing a kind of sense of service. All these spiritual values has become much more clear in people's minds. So in these ways, Resurgence and ecologists has influenced the worldview, the thinking of deep ecology, of Gaia. These values were not known, but Resurgence introduced James Lovelock's Gaia theory, that Earth is not a dead rock, it's a living organism. Resurgence introduced Arne Naess's work in England and around the world, that we have to see the intrinsic value in nature and not just utilitarian value of how useful nature is for humans. So these values and this kind of practices, Resurgence has influenced in mainstream society. Of course, there's much more to do. It's only a beginning. There's a long way to go, but Resurgence and ecologists has done a good work. And a part of Resurgence and ecologists has been the establishment of Schumacher College, because when I had a lot of connections with our teachers through Resurgence, so I knew Vandana Shiva, I knew Fritjof Capra, I knew Arne Ness, I knew James Lovelock. All these people I knew because of Resurgence. They were writing and contributing articles in Resurgence. So when we started Schumacher College, I had a good kind of address book for all these wonderful teachers. Then also to inform students, Resurgence was the magazine where we promoted our courses and teachers, and the students came through Resurgence. So Resurgence has been very important instrument in making Schumacher College what it is today. So these are the achievements of Resurgence. Okay? Go to your next question. I can't hear it. Hold on. I can't hear you.
Yeah, you have to unmute.
Muted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fine. Now,
Very good. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Satish.
go ahead. Now I can hear you.
You can hear me now? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We can expect that much of the job force will be automated in the next 10 to 15 years. And I mean, there's an outstanding history of, you know, when men don't have things to do to build up society, they tend to destroy it. And it's hard to sort of wrap my mind around how we're going to cope with the fact that most of the labor that we would usually do can be done by a robot or some kind of automated machine. I mean, in my opinion, I think farming should be left in the hands of humans, but we're running out of jobs that we literally have to do anymore. So it's hard to know how we're going to be able to cope with that without actually destroying ourselves.
Yeah. This is something we have to address. It's a big question. It's a big problem all over the world, in Japan, in China, in Europe, in America, everywhere. This robotic automation and robotic revolution is coming, and we have to rethink about it, because as robots take over our jobs, people are going to become unhealthy and bored. They will find that they have lost meaning of life, and they cannot use their imagination in making anything. And so people are going to turn away from robotics, particularly, for example, what you rightly say, things like agriculture, things like crafts, making something with your hand is not only for growing food and making things for use, but also it's expression of our imagination and our creativity and keeping us engaged in something artistic and something beautiful to make. It gives you a sense of satisfaction. It gives you a sense of contentment. It gives you a sense of fulfillment when you are making something, you are growing something. And if everything is done for you and you become useless, robots are making humans useless, unnecessary. Humans are no longer necessary to do anything. And that will make people bored and disappointed and discontented and unhappy. And so they will go back. They will come back to doing gardening. I was just reading in Paris, they have created a roof garden. And the mayor of Paris is funding it. The government is funding a roof garden, and they are going to produce enough food to feed 200 families in Paris. Now that's coming back. So there's a kind of anti-robot revolution coming back, that even in the cities, they want to do urban farming. And so, so those of us like you and I, we must continue to keep our gardening, farming, and crafts and arts alive, and not allow robots to take over. Of course, robots can do something which are not artistic or not human. For example, maybe working in a factory or something like that. But agriculture, cooking, building a house, making furniture, making pottery, making painting, dancing, singing. All these arts and crafts must not be allowed to be overtaken by robots. And we must work for it. We must create this. We must create this opinion, public opinion, educate people that it is not only to produce things, but also for human fulfillment and human happiness and human joy and expression of our creativity and expression of our imagination. We need to work with our hands, hands-on. This is very important.
I just want to make sure, what I'm taking from this is that as automation starts to take over, what we're going to see is a natural sort of counterculture where the people who are subject to the privilege of having so much automated for them will still choose manual labor, will still choose, artistic expression, or they'll still choose agriculture, even though they could have it automated for themselves. They won't really want that.
Yeah. They will choose. They will choose because by being engaged in agriculture, touching the earth, sowing the seed, harvesting the food, planting the trees, that gives you a kind of healthy, happy, joyful engagement. So people are going to choose that. I believe so. And I hope so. I'm optimistic.
Hey, does somebody else have a question? Come on, huh?
I have one more.
Well, let's try. Let's get.
Carry on.
Did you have one? Come on over, Nina. You're thinking about it. I want to ask Satish, could you follow up a little bit? We have a lot of young people here, and they're graduating from college, and they're thinking about, whether they're going to go to work for some organization or what they're going to do in terms of right livelihood, and they have lots of ideals and lots of vision for what they want to see happen in the world. And could you talk a little bit about, somebody who's thinking about what work to do in the world?
Yes. At Schumacher College, as you remember, when students leave, I always give them one advice. I say, don't look for a job. Because if you go and look for a job, the jobs are mostly going to be unecological, unspiritual, boring, sitting in an office, working for a big company, corporations, business, government, military, police. All the jobs are going to be extremely soul destroying. So go and create your own job. Don't look for a job, but create your own job. And so what kind of jobs you create? Use your imagination, get a few people together, maybe a little cooperative, a little community, and jobs should be based in some sort of innovative work, like you can create a beautiful restaurant, or you can create a beautiful bookshop, or you can create a beautiful garden, or you can create some kind of distribution of holistic food. Any job, but be your own boss rather than working under another boss. That's my advice. So I always say this to our young people who leave Schumacher College. So now this is your challenge to find a job which is entrepreneurial, but ecologically sustainable, environmentally sustainable, socially just, spiritually fulfilling. If these are the three criteria, if you can have with your job, then it's a good job. But if it is socially not just, it's ecologically and environmentally not sustainable, and spiritually not fulfilling, then that job is not worth doing. So that's my advice to young people. And use your imagination. I cannot give you any recipe of what job you do, but I only say, think, talk to people, and find what is needed in your community. Meet a need in your community. And do the job with a sense of service, because we cannot separate our spirituality with our practicality. The practice and the spirit must come together. How we live every day in the world, our food, our clothes, our housing, our economy, our education, our agriculture, our politics, everything has to be done with a sense of service, so that spirituality and practicality are integrated. So that's the advice I give.
We have some students clapping here, Satish. They like that. And you also often say that they nature provides us with all these resources. We have our friends, and could you talk about what they already have that nature gives us?
Yes, I mean we are made of 5 elements. I say we are made of earth, air, fire, water. These are the 4 physical elements, and we are also made of 5th element. And you can either this is non-physical element. I can call it consciousness, or you can call it spirit, or you can call it imagination, or you can call it your heart. So this is invisible. And we all have this gift in us. So we have our imagination, we have our consciousness, we have our spirit. So bringing that 5th element into our work and seeing how benevolent the universe is, how benevolent nature is. Nature provides everything. Nature provides us with soil, with wood, with all the minerals, water, everything is there. So just we have to take this nature as a gift, universe benevolence as a gift, and use that those gifts to make our economy, make our jobs. And so that's how use your imagination. That's a key.
We have a question from Nina here. And
Okay.
You'll like this, Satish. Nina has a little village economy. We have a sewing shop on campus, and she makes these beautiful
Lovely.
clothes and things like that.
Lovely. You are the artist
I wouldn't exaggerate, but yeah.
and a craftswoman.
I'm making.
Crafts and arts.
I'm wondering about developing countries. How do you see the future of developing countries, like in Africa, in Asia, in South America? There's a lot of questions that come up, like
Yeah.
whether
The thing is that at the moment, the so-called developing countries are influenced by the developed countries. So America and Europe and Japan, these countries which are industrialized, they are conditioning and kind of conditioning everybody's mind. So all our education is teaching everybody that unless you are working with computers and cars and all the technology, you are not developed. Agriculture is not development. The president of the United States of America after the Second World War, President Truman, stood in the United Nations Assembly and said the world is divided into 2 parts: the developed world and undeveloped world. The developed world is a world of industry. So America, Europe, industrialized world is the developed world. And the world which lives by agriculture, like Africa, China, India, at that time in 1948, are undeveloped. And our mission is to bring industry and automation and industrialization to the undeveloped world. That was the mission set by President Truman. And that has spread United Nations and all the education, universities, colleges, schools, everywhere, China, India, Africa, South America, everywhere, Eastern Europe, everywhere, we are being taught with one single monocultural message that only thing in the world worth doing is GDP, economic growth, economy. Your President Clinton said, is the economy stupid? Everything is irrelevant. Only economy is relevant. Now, this is the message of development. And everywhere now, world, like a tsunami, like a kind of wave of this materialism and economic growth has swept the world. So now the work of Schumacher College and your college and Resurgence and all the work I am doing is to stand against this tide of materialism, against this tide of tsunami of consumerism and industrialization. And we say, no, economy is good. But economy without ecology, economy without spirituality, economy without human values, economy without social justice is not enough. So we have to balance that idea of development. We say economic development is okay, but spiritual development is also necessary. You are innovating industry, you are innovating technology, you are innovating the travel to moon or to Mars or to nuclear weapons, but there is no development in wisdom. So you can have technology developed and wisdom, human wisdom, undeveloped. So a country like America and Europe, Germany, England, France, and Japan, Canada, all these countries have very developed technology and developed economy, but undeveloped wisdom. Whereas countries like India or China, they may have less development in technology, but they're very highly developed wisdom. And so we cannot call them developing or undeveloped countries. But the Western leaders and Western economists think that if you are not industrialized, you are undeveloped. So this is a big challenge we face. And so we have to not say that we are undeveloped because we live by agriculture or we live by crafts. We say, but we need these skills. And if you go to India, have you been to India? Huh? Not yet. This goes down.
Here, go ahead. I had muted it so we'd have better sound. Go ahead.
Okay. So have you been to India? No. Now, if you go to India, a country like Kerala, every house you will find mango tree, coconut tree, banana tree, papaya tree, guava tree, and the land, the garden, vegetables growing on the roof, growing on the walls, everywhere. They may be poor in comparison to American family who have cars and computers and big houses and so on, but they are not miserable. They are not starving. Majority of people in countries like India and China have basic food, and they are very good craftsmen. They make beautiful shoes. They make like you are making your craft. My mother in 1930s and 40s used to make beautiful shawls with hand embroidery, with mirrors in it. And she was a craftswoman. She had 2 cows, and she milked the cow with hand and made butter and cheese and yogurt and everything, ghee. So we were not poor. We were not rich. We were just humans. So this label that we put on people, you are developed, you are undeveloped, you are rich, you are poor, all these labels are just labels. I don't take much interest in labels. I think we don't have to be rich, we don't have to be poor, we don't have to be developed, we don't have to be undeveloped. We have to be human. And to be human is to be artistic, to be craftsman, to be agriculture, to grow food, to cook food, to sing, to dance, to paint, to do music, to have a good life, good love, good friendship, good community. These are the values, not just economic growth, as if economic growth is the new religion of our time. We don't like Christianity, we don't like Hinduism, we don't like Buddhism, but we like religion of economy. So we have to, this new God of technology, if any question you ask, they say, technology has the answer. Like God has the answer, technology has the answer. So technology is the new God, and economic growth is a new religion of our time. What is point? We have replaced our blind faith in some old-fashioned God to blind faith in technology and in economic growth, and we have to challenge it.
Go ahead.
But still, when you like, I've been to some countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, and still you see, like, in the street is very full of trash, and the sewage is untreated, and the running water is you can't drink, and you still have all these issues, even if you see the people are happy and they're creative and all this kind of stuff. Still they lack a lot of basic needs.
Yeah. This is true. I'm not glorifying the kind of poverty, and I'm not glorifying the dirt and the deprivation that is going on. I'm not glorifying. Is it all right? Are we still okay? What is that?
We're good, Satish. Keep going. We're good.
Okay. Okay, now I can see you. Yes, so what you are saying is true, and large part of that is the result of industrialization. That what you see today is much more happening because of industrialization, and lots of jobs have been taken away, and people have been brought into cities, and the cheap jobs, sweat labor, producing things, clothes and shoes for Western market. And so lots of poverty you see today is a result of the uneven, unequal industrial development. But also before that, we suffered from colonialism, and we suffered from imperialism. And therefore, in India, for example, all the raw material was taken to England, and the raw material will processed in England, like clothes. Cotton will be brought from England to from India to England, and then clothes will be made in factory in England and then taken back to India. So our craftsmen were stopped from weaving and from spinning. And so colonialism, imperialism, and industrialism has created more poverty than in the past. So I'm not glorifying poverty. I'm saying we must go to a new situation where everybody can share the gifts of nature. There's enough land. If we work on the land, if you sow one seed of apple, you get 1,000 apples. Land is very generous. Land is very abundant. So if we put one seed of grain, of rice, of corn, of wheat, of mango, of any apples, or pears, or oranges, they will give you, soil will give you lots of food. And soil will give you cotton. Soil will give you wool. Soil will give you everything. And we need to have a skill to turn that cotton into clothes, and wool into clothes, and food. All that is there. Just our system at the moment is such that it's not distributed equally. There is an extreme richness in one part of the world and extreme poverty on the other side of the world. And so this is not nature's creation. This is a human creation. And so what we have created by humans can be solved by humans. So we have to take leadership. So you are the young leader of today and tomorrow. And you have to take leadership to inform people, change people's thinking, change people's consciousness, so that we can have a society which is more balanced and not extreme richness, not extreme poverty.
Do you think the countries that colonialized in the past, or other countries that now considered to be the Western world, do you think it's their duty to go back to these countries and help them develop, or you think it's more right if the underdeveloped countries would
It's not so much a question of going back and helping them. The question is not taking, not continuing to take. Even today, there is a more wealth going from the developing countries to the developed world. Agriculture, food, manufacturing. If you go to Bangladesh, many factories in Bangladesh are producing clothes for big companies like what's the big company sell clothes? Pharma, and many big companies. In England we have Marks and Spencer and people like that. In America too. Nike shoes are made in Bangladesh or Vietnam or poor countries or Mexico or Morocco, something like that. So still the flow of wealth is going from the developing countries to developed world. So it's not a question of developed world going to help them. The question is stopping the flow of wealth from the poor to the rich, and making more manufacturing and more local economy. I believe in local economy. So the developed world must become more self-reliant and have their own local food, and local economy, local agriculture, and not exploit. It's not a question of giving them anything, it's a stopping exploitation. The exploitation is still continuing. With imperialism and colonialism went, the political rule went, but the economic colonialism and economic imperialism has not ended. It's continuing. And so what we need to do is to end the economic colonialism. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, do you have a question out there in Maine?
I have lots of questions out here in Maine. Satish, how do you think that, I guess you already spoke a little bit about how the students could use what they learn after they get out of school in terms of creating their own path, and how do you feel like that the skills that they have connect with just being in nature, learning directly from nature?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Nature is our greatest teacher. There is no greater teacher than nature. When our great poet laureate and Nobel Prize winning poet, Rabindranath Tagore, he started school in Bengal near Kolkata, and he used to hold his classes under a tree. And he used to tell his students that I'm your human teacher, but this tree is also our teacher. So learn from the tree, learn the compassion from the tree, learn the generosity from the tree. And the tree, mango tree or apple tree, you go to apple tree, it gives you fruit without any requirement for money. Tree does not ask for money. The tree does not ask if you have a Visa card. Tree gives. So that kind of generosity, that kind of forgiveness, that kind of unconditional love, which nature has, we can learn from nature. So nature is our spiritual teacher. Nature is our practical teacher. So young people need to be in touch with nature. Our classroom is too confined. Half of the time, I would say, children and young people, the students in universities and colleges and schools should go out and learn from nature, from the trees. And you learn from nature by being engaged with nature, planting trees, gardening, growing food, harvesting, all those things. When we do practical things, then we learn from nature and we become humble. How much nature is giving. So humility comes by being in nature. If we don't go in nature, we become too arrogant. And so nature is our greatest teacher. And we should have book of, Shakespeare. Shakespeare said, tongues in trees, books in running brooks, sermon in stones, and good in everything. This is the As You Like It, the play, As You Like It, Shakespeare play. So he said,